My name is Keith King. I am the sculptor of the piece that you can actually see behind me, which is part of a series which I call, in the smaller versions, Table Divers, but this one is a version which is actually made to go in the garden. So it's technically fairly complicated to make in that it's a large object to fire in clay, which is what it's made out of. It's also fired to a high temperature to withstand the winter. I was inspired by the idea of the figure disappearing into a surface. So the fact that you cannot see the top of the figure is to do with the idea that they are disappearing into another material. And in this case, the ground. In the smaller versions, a table, and so that it's as if the sculpture is becoming part of the object it's on. There are only two materials that you will see in the work that's in the gallery, either clay, and I have a lot of technical expertise with clay, or bronze. Mainly in clay. It's a substance which I'm good at using. The ideas for the sculptures usually come from things that I've seen. So I will go to the beach and I will see people doing things. I will see somebody wandering along the street doing something which I think is interesting, or wearing something which is, I think, strange and exciting. And I do a very, very quick little sketch. Usually very, very scribbly, in whatever paper I have in my pocket or that I brought with me. And then I reconstruct what I found interesting from that initial inspiration in the sculpture, which will take some time, and it will require, especially if it's a pose or something which is less obvious. So if something is fairly straightforward and square, I know from years and years of life drawing and life modelling where bits of anatomy should go. Well, I started making sculpture when I was about 14, and I've always made sculpture. I'm, as you can see, I'm a product of the 1960s and 1970s, and my early sculpture was all abstract, because that's what I did. That's what I did at college and so on. I was a product of minimalism, of material sculpture. So a lot of the people I knew made things out of very specific materials and so on. And there was a point when I was making some sculptures by taking lumps of wood and carving them together. They started becoming figurative, and they started becoming almost like a figure. And I thought, and I either had to say that I didn't want them to become figurative at all, or I grasped the nettle, as it were, and started making figurative sculpture. So I decided, because they were going that way, that's what I would do, and I started making figures. And you always start by drawing the feet, and you start with the feet, and the feet you work upwards with the figure, so that you create a solidity from the bottom up. So feet have always been important to me. I like big feet on sculptures.
So, what is the gay side of life when we see your work, or is it just a male figure?
That's an interesting question, because I am gay, and
gay?
Yeah, the inspiration isn't. And on occasions I have actually made much more explicitly gay pieces of work. They vary. Sometimes it's, as I said, it's to do with something which I've seen. So if it's in a gay context that I've seen it, then it will be much more of a gay figure. If it's in something on the beach, then they're just a figure. Sometimes it can be just something small which actually sparks you off. So there's one of the sculptures is of somebody making listening to the phone in underwear. Or beachwear, and it was inspired by seeing somebody in Edinburgh who was listening to a phone call while carrying some things, wearing a pair of shorts. He wasn't on the beach, but he was actually walking around the city, listening to his phone. But he was listening to his phone like that. Mm-hmm. And
Finally, now it looks like he was on the beach.
you know, it changed a little bit. The inspiration was the listening to the phone and the pose, the flip-flops and which is what it's called. It was something that affected everybody from behind, in front, sideways and so on. But it was a bit more like a reliquary when they were laid out in a box. So there was originally a big box that went with them.